Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build a HubSpot Super Admin with Lucy. How you doing, Lucy?
Hi, everyone. Great. Very super excited about our talk today. A lot of things to mention.
Yeah, we've already gotten into it. It's so hard sometimes, like when we start chatting before the session and like you just want to hit the go live button because it's a great conversation. And we were just talking about how it's so easy I think to put expectations on ourselves where it's like, okay, we're gonna get HubSpot. I'm gonna be in charge of HubSpot. Let's go build workflows. Like, let's go do this. Right? Let's build all these properties. And yeah, maybe we don't start there.
No, I think that the first thing that any HubSpot user, but especially a super admin, should know or should understand first is that HubSpot, the CRM, is a database. So the first thing that you need to understand is how this database is built, the data model. What are the objects? What is the structure of the information in the CRM? What are the properties? The properties are assigned to a specific object, let's just say to contacts, to companies, to deals, or to custom objects in any case. So first, we need to understand that. We need to have a clear image. Right now, HubSpot has a beautiful functionality that is rather new. I think it was launched this year on how to see the data model in the CRM. So that really helped a lot. But if not, in the future, if someone of any other CRM is listening to us today, you should understand that data structure behind the software. That is going to save you so much time. That is going to help you understand the relation among the objects and how everything is connected in the CRM. So then if you want to build a list, if you want to build a workflow, you already know what to search or where to start. Because thinking about mastering workflows without knowing how the information is organized in the CRM is like trying to fly when you don't even know how to walk. So it's not real. So I
Yeah.
think without getting technical, because sometimes this is people think that a super admin should be super technical and should be like a software engineering. No, this is basic. This is like if you want to speak HubSpot language, you need to start learning the words. You need to start learning structures, language structures, how to conjugate your verbs. Well, it's just the same. The first thing that you need to know are the objects and how is the information structured in your CRM. This is going to be different from every company. This is going to be different for the industries. Of course, the standard objects in the CRM are the same, but then you could have some custom objects or could be using a standard object in kind of a out of the box way for your company. And the properties, of course, you are already going to have custom properties for you. So that is not going to be the same if you compare it to another company, even if they are in your same industry, maybe they're using different information valuable for them. So this is
Yeah.
the first important step, I think.
Yeah. And I think it has to be first because here's what happens when it's not first. You start building stuff and then you've got to explain it to others on your team that need to use it. And they ask you questions that you can't answer clearly because you don't know actually how the system works, right? Like, when in reality, like if you understand the building blocks and how important, for example, lists are, and that they're based on properties and objects, and that really drives a lot of the functionality of the tool. You just got to come at it from a very foundational place and even then it's not easy to kind of translate for the users on the team, the leadership team. So like, I love how you put that, where you're learning this language so that you can share that common language with the rest of the team. Otherwise, we're buried in explanation conversations like constantly, right?
Yes, and also I think one of the first challenges or pains with the CRM is duplicated information. If you don't know the information that you already have, you're always creating new properties, new fields for your forms, And that is not correct. You end up with a portal reaching out the 1,000 custom properties and you don't get to create anything else. And everyone panics in the team because, we have reached the limit. But take a look at what it is now. So the first question that always is asked in the Super Admin Bootcamp is, how should we start an audit, a portal audit? Well, here is how you start: by analyzing the objects that are in use, the properties that are in use, the most important properties that each team needs, marketing for qualifying, sales for move forward with a sales opportunity, and understand if that information is properly set in the CRM or if there's duplicate information. Because I have found lots of workflows triggering with one property, but the property that was in use was not that one, was another one. So they were asking, oh, no, but I don't know if this workflow is working. No, I can tell you that it's not working because this property, nobody's using that property. The property that you're using in Forms is this other one. Oh, but they are called the same. Yes, because you have 5 properties for country, for example, or 5
Right.
properties for preferred language. So those are the main things that any super admin should be aware of, at least to start noticing, and try to avoid, of course, in the future, and always be working on and keeping. That is going to keep your database healthy and the information trustworthy, because if not, someone is going to be looking at the wrong property, thinking that property is not completed, thinking that property is not useful, and maybe the information is living in another property. Same property, maybe same name, same purpose, but it's not that property that you're looking in the contact record. It's another one that maybe is not shown there. So that is the first one of the main problems that we usually hear, and
Yeah.
the biggest challenge is how to keep the CRM organized. We always say that you're always organizing or disorganizing the CRM. So please choose wisely to be the one organized
Yes.
and not
And
disorganized.
sometimes HubSpot is doing the disorganization for you,
Hmm.
when they come out with new things. And that's something that's super interesting right now as it expands to like, everything is an object and it's no longer just 4 standard objects. But like if you're paying attention, I'm starting to get like why they slow roll a lot of these other objects, because orders and carts have just come out, right? And now we have, because invoices is not a full, there's no full view for invoices yet,
Hmm.
but now we have 4 full record views: company, contact, orders, and carts, all with address properties on them, right? And there's stuff like this as we start to like come out with the whole, support of the whole life cycle, and HubSpot brings this in, and you start to get excited, and we bring this new stuff to our teams, and we're like, if we don't address that stuff, uh, it creates a new concern that you didn't even do yourself, right? So that's why keeping an eye on, we see it happen with app, installations too, where they bring in their own set of properties, and all of a sudden we've got duplicate data. So definitely always keeping an eye on that. And I love that you mentioned the new data model overview, because I think they're doing a great job of trying to make that stuff visible as much as possible for admins, so they don't always have to be auditing, the whole portal, for example.
Yeah, and I wanted to share with you experience that we had this week, well, last week, and it continues. The novel continues these days. Is that when you really know how the CRM works and you really understand it, of course, HubSpot is going to be launching new things. And some things maybe are launched, and sorry, HubSpot, if you're hearing, but let's just say some things are being launched sooner than they should have been. And maybe testing was kind of, okay, let's just roll it and let's just see what happens. And we encouraged a problem last week about a custom object that we have created in a customer account that is a real estate business. And we started having problems associating activities with that custom object. So we were noticing that whenever we wanted to create reports about the activities, the meetings, and all the things that were being recorded in the custom object, the report was not showing the information. It was showing only if there was a contact associated to that custom object. But if they didn't have a contact, it wasn't showing. So we created a ticket for HubSpot support. So we started discussing with the girl from HubSpot because she was saying, oh, no, this is the normal standard. And I said, no, this is not the normal standard way of how an object and those activities should work. It doesn't work like this with contact. It doesn't work like this with deals. It shouldn't work like this with a custom object. So we started escalating this conversation. She said, no, but I think it does. And I said, no, I think this shouldn't. So in the end, long story short, after a week of sending messages, she said, okay, I talked with the developers team, and you're right, this is not the way that it's supposed to be working. So right now they need to be working on this, solving this issue, and we're going to get back to you because this is actually a problem that we hadn't noticed before. Nobody had reported it. So sometimes when you really know how the system should work, and this is common sense, I wasn't even talking about technical stuff. I wasn't even, okay, I had to talk about the custom object definition, but that is something else. But I was thinking about common sense. If the custom object doesn't behave like this, why should the standard object doesn't behave like this? Why should the custom object behave like this? This is
Right.
different. At least it should behave the same way as the standard object. So sometimes you just need to use your common sense and know how all the other objects are working and the association of activities and records work so that you get to understand, is this okay? Because I could have left saying, oh, okay, so this report that I want to build for my custom object is not possible. But I said, no, this is not, this shouldn't be like this. So always be challenging yourself, always be asking if this is right or this is wrong, investigate, test yourself, create different environments. If you could, have a sandbox. If not, you can create a free HubSpot account to test new things. But don't just conform yourself with the first response that you get, not either from anyone in your team or for HubSpot, because we could all be mistaken. There could be some bugs or things that are not working the way they should be in HubSpot because it's a software that it's always developing and it's always learning and evolving. But always be prepared to give your feedback, because if I hadn't reported this, probably maybe someone else was experiencing the same thing, any other user, any other agency. But if I didn't report it, it wouldn't be solved. It's not
Right.
solved right now, but it will be, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's where
But
it's as it continues to expand, like the only thing we're in control of as admins is really awareness
yes,
of like what the current state is and kind of what our options are when something goes wrong, and understanding that, like, you know, HubSpot's moving faster than anybody can keep up with. And I learned early on, like it's possible that they just like missed the turning on this button somewhere. And then I say something, and then 2 hours later, it's crazy to think that you can impact such a platform. But knowing how fast they're moving and they've got so many different teams, like they're also really great at that feedback loop and listening. And they're kind of, maybe to a fault where they like introduce stuff a little early just so they can start that feedback loop earlier. But I think you highlight something where it's not about, like we talked before we started, it's not about technical aptitude. Like the awareness is much more important, because and this is where we talk about like IT versions of admins and system admins and the old ways, and right, like if that person is like really IT focused, like they just build a workaround like right away, right? They try to do it in some other way, and like maybe even to the point where we've seen people create new objects, right? Just so they can get the reports looking the way they want, when in reality, like it's not working the way it's supposed to. Let's maybe fix that part, first. So I think that's a key point.
yeah, and I think that we were talking before off camera about who could be a super admin, and anyone could be. You don't need to be technical. So I was telling Chris that my background is not technical. When I was young, I used to be a ballet dancer, and then at 17, I chose to to go to university and to start a career. So I chose finance, nothing to do with CRM or software or technology. Of course, I had to use some softwares. Of course, I knew what an ERP, a CRM was because of my previous works. But understanding this whole marketing world, at that point, HubSpot was only Marketing Hub. So I started working with that. And okay, then I started uh, advancing with the tool and learning new stuff. And here I am, like, okay, 14 years later, it's not a couple of months or a couple of days, but you get to know the tool, so you don't have to be technical. Of course, you need to dedicate time, always be curious, always be trying new things. I don't know, trying the betas, testing different ways of doing things, doing certifications if you want to gain more knowledge, or at least listening to people that could be relevant in the industry or that could be interesting or challenging you to think differently. You have a lot of resources today. Let's just think that maybe 14 years ago, we didn't have many resources. It
Yeah.
was a
We also
little
weren't
bit more.
getting 800
Yes,
updates per year. Like, so
yes. Yes, yes. But well, that is the beauty of this. You get to be all this is always changing. So either if you want to always be evolving, because if you're curious like me and I think like you, Chris, you could always learn new things. Even though if you think you already know something, when you challenge yourself to think about that, maybe for another company, maybe for another industry, maybe if you change jobs, I encountered a lot of clients that said, "Oh, I used to use HubSpot in my previous work, but it was totally different." And that's okay. Maybe you use it in a different way. So I think that is the beauty of this, that we get to reinvent how we use the CRM every time we enter a new account, every time we enter a new business, our new portal. So you gain so much knowledge from that. You experience so many different way of doing things, and I think that is super helpful for each one of us to learn new things, to evolve with the CRM, and also to be able to think what comes next. How can we think of growth? Because if I don't know the basic, I'm not going to be able to think about growth because I cannot even see it. I'm like underwater. So first you need to come off the water with the basic knowledge of the CRM, and then you can start thinking about what you want to build.
yeah.
So
No, I love that because, and that's the whole point for me, like with this common language foundation, right? When I was internal, I could create that as far as like, let's do customer experience. Let's focus on making it easier. Like, here's the marketing strategy. I could get alignment there, but I didn't have like the RevOps background. So I couldn't create it when it came to what we're calling things in the CRM and like how it all works together. And now that I have that part too, it's like, okay, now that like we can get out of these explanation conversations and actually help the team think about growth. Like, it's so easy to say like, oh, this person isn't growth minded, or they're not focused on the customer, or whatever. But in reality, so often they're just buried in day-to-day tasks. They can't even think strategically. Like, it actually is worse for them if they try to think strategically, because then they just can't get all their stuff done, right?
yeah,
So as an admin, that's can be really powerful if you can help, up level the team and sometimes leadership, as well. As like, this is what HubSpot's doing or can do for the business. Let's make sure everybody understands that. And, then we can start having different conversations instead of, putting out fires all the time.
yes, and we are playing with the world of languages, but also when you work with a company with multiple teams that handle different languages in the CRM, language
Mm,
should be one of the first things that maybe as you, of course, I think this should be something that a super admin could lead. So let's just say, okay, the common language or the main language in the portal is going to be, for example, English. So even though that you work in your portal in another language, every time you create something, the naming conventions should be in English. Because if you don't handle, in this case, properly the right language, how do you know that the thing that I'm reading in Chinese, what does it mean? What does that property name mean? What that form does? This landing page, what is the goal of this landing page? So speaking about language, one super admin should be the one advocating so that everyone in the portal is using at least the same language so that everyone could know what it's been done in the CRM. Because if I need to audit a portal and I have properties created in French, okay, properties created in Chinese, properties created in Norwegian, how am I going to, of course, I can play with Duolingo a little bit, but I'm not going to be able to understand all of the languages that people could be using inside the portal. So setting up one main understanding language for everyone of every teams around the world to be using in the CRM, this is a very important role, very important. So this could save a lot of time for a lot of people, could avoid a lot of duplicity in information, could avoid a lot of things not getting properly done. So if you let people work, they would do the best they can, because in the end, we're all doing the best we can. But there
Yep.
should be someone should be the one setting. And I think that someone should be the super admin. The super admin should be always advocating for having the CRM in order, to have everyone understand what they're doing, or at least what is being created. So languages is one of the, the challenges, I think, in the CRM, especially for big companies that have a.
Yeah. No, it's crazy to think about. But I remember my time when I was working for a Japanese company, and they had Salesforce, and there's a couple different Salesforce instances, and bringing in HubSpot, and just like, yeah, it was interesting. But it reminds me, like, even now that we're expanding into all the departments of the organization, like even finance is coming into HubSpot, like the way that everybody calls, the same data, like between marketing, sales, customer success, finance, like taking the time to help everybody understand, because that's where it's like, you might, like, the finance leader might want to be in charge of their area, and they call a certain, like, especially when it comes to dollars and cents, they have some very interesting language, in my opinion, to call, profitability and surplus and stuff like that. So that's where it's getting interesting. Like, where do you think the line is in terms of, like, between department leaders, or maybe, let's say a help desk leader versus super admin of the system? Like, how have you been seeing that?
Well, I think that not necessarily the help desk leader maybe is not thinking about the CRM itself, but the super admin should be thinking about the CRM. So they could, I think that the same thing we mentioned last time about the RevOps and the super admin, so they could work together. They should find a common language and understanding of terminology and of things important for the business. And I think that you mentioned something very important, because this is something happening right now for every company. There's a lot of things that were never written. Nobody explained, no one, how invoices are called, or how revenue is measured, or how you could think, oh yeah, but I know because I've done this, I don't know, for the past 20 years. Yes, but maybe this is not how it's called in this company. So finding those touch points between teams, that could be a very, very good superpower and responsibility for a super admin, because when you get to communicate with everyone at the same level, when you get everyone to understand what it's been done and what that everything means, and if you use some other tools like Super that I really love, and you get to put all that documentation live and dynamically in the CRM, it's fantastic. But at least have it in paper that everyone is understanding the same terms the same way. Because miscommunication is always like the devil's tail in everything.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and let's just say this has nothing to do with the CRM. The CRM is the victim here. It's not the problem. But people gets frustrated with the CRM. Oh, I don't understand what does it mean, so I'm not going to complete that field. But the CRM doesn't have the fault. The fault is from everyone that they didn't task. Maybe nobody tells them what does it mean, why should you do that, or why should you use that, or why it's important that you complete that field. Whenever we start a new project, even though if they are new to HubSpot or they are already using the CRM, we start with the foundations part, just going back to the objects, the properties, what does this mean, who needs to be aware of this, who is going to be responsible of completing this information, is this coming automatically from a form, is this completely is this completed manually, is it imported. So this has to be clear, and everyone should know that when we're talking about MQLs, what does this mean? It's not only marketing qualified lead. What does this mean? Should we know the contact type? Should we know the company type? Should we know the region? Should we know the type of company? What should we know just to know that a marketing qualified lead is a marketing qualified lead, not just life cycle stage label? What does this represent for the business? And those
Yes.
definitions, they are not usually made by no one. Everybody
Right.
thinks that they know. Oh, yes, it's a marketing qualified lead. But nobody knows. Nobody understands what does it mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's why I
there's
like
some.
this, the awareness. Again, we come back to
Yes.
the awareness. And like, I often say, like, if people think that they're just constantly firefighting, like, and there's any doubt, like, mapping, like mapping process and mapping data structure, it feels like a lot if you don't have anything, and it is a lot. But the
Yes.
best thing you can do is just get started, knowing that it's going to be a while before you have everything figured out. But the more that you get on paper or in a mapping tool, the more you start to find out about your own process, because you don't have to always talk about these main pieces that everybody does, but then you start to get granular. And I've been doing some on-site stuff with the client recently, and on Monday I was there, and I have some responsibilities related to growth, so I'm involved in the sales process. And literally, like, we're building, like, it's an e-commerce focused, like revenue stream, right? But that doesn't stop. Like, we're all at the same table, like going over other stuff. A customer calls, uh so technically that's the MQL, right? And
Yes.
the person answering it hands it to me. So now it's like SQL, and I take the information and hand it to the person responsible for quoting, like, who's also at the table. They get the quote out, and the person picks it up the order, like, so no e-commerce at all, right? 2 hours later, the thing is done. And every time this happens, I realize how much we've taken for granted because we've been together, like in offices, and all of this gets lost. Like, clearly that was not a process that you would label the way I just did. But because when it happens in real time, like, why would we make a process? It's just that easy, right? Like, but then you try to put it into a system like HubSpot and you work off site. And this is like, I always come back to digital transformation, and I'm learning more and more about really how verbal and how in person processes. It's very hard. Like, if you're not like, I am probably too obsessed with the problem. That's why I'm always thinking about stuff like this. But it's that level of awareness, especially at the admin level. Like, don't take anything for granted, like, that people know exactly what everything means. Like, get it, like, say it out loud. You're training people, you have documentation, you got to cover people up, because it's not for, you're the only person where it's your day job to do this. Like everybody else has other things that they're supposed to be doing. So if you're not like surrounding them with support and enablement, there's going to be miscommunication.
And I really like the example that you give, Chris, because whenever you think that there isn't a process, there is a process. Even though if it's in person, even though if it doesn't go through a platform, even though if nothing's written about that, there is a process. You have it so internally determined at that point that you may not realize that there is a process, but there is. It could be better, could be worse. Well, we can discuss that. But the problem lies down when you want to add someone new to the team, and the only way of that new person learning what they should be doing is that you have to have them with you the whole day so that they could mimic you all the time and do the same thing. And that cannot scale. When you are a solopreneur or when you're a small business and there's only one person in sales and only one person in marketing, okay. But you cannot scale, you cannot onboard new team members like that. You need to. And another thing is, okay, everything that you just mentioned is outside the CRM, or you just only see the order once it's placed. But how can we know what happened? What are the previous steps for that order? How can we know where can we do better, or what? Let's just imagine that the order didn't end up buying, or it went to abandoned cart and died there. How would you know where went wrong if you don't have all those steps, at least, I don't know, in a note, in some place recorded, something? So maybe the gap between not having anything or having everything in your head because you already know what to do and having the perfect process in the CRM is not realistic. Maybe baby steps. We were talking about this at the beginning. Don't imagine ideal processes that are not going to be achievable if you're still working like a solopreneur at home. You need to start doing small steps. You have a lot of little milestones until you achieve having the perfect process all automated. People love to mention. Remember that when social media started, everyone said, oh, make it viral, make it viral. Okay, so right now the make it viral is automated. Let's just automate everything. You cannot automate a process that doesn't exist. Automation is only for escalation of processes that are already working properly. If you escalate something that is not working properly, you're just going to expand the mess and the BS everywhere. So automation is not for everyone. You need to have a mature process, a tested process. And once that process is properly tested, you can automate and scale that. So the first step, maybe in those cases when nothing is written and everything is inside someone's head, is start documenting at least a few of those steps. Once you start seeing that, because people, we have eyes, we have ears, and we have mouths. So we tend to see things, to hear things, and to say things. So most of us this comes from the NLP because we have meta programs. We have the three, of course, because most of us use all of our senses. So sometimes we are more auditive, sometimes we are more visual, but we all remember things that we have seen with better detail or with less detail. So when you map processes, the process of mapping, of drawing the steps that you do, is so that you can have a visual remembrance of that. It doesn't matter if you don't remember the details. And sometimes when we were in school, you could remember everything that your sheet said when you were studying, but sometimes no, you just remember titles, or you just remember where it was placed. Okay, that is the idea of visual mapping, to have
Yes.
the main picture. You don't have to remember everything, but start with that. Start with those steps. At least start mapping things or make it visual. Because when you make it visual, you make it tangible. If it's only in your head, nobody can see it, nobody can touch it, and nobody can at least say, oh, I don't agree with that, I don't do it like that. Because
Yes.
so
No,
that
that's
is the main purpose of doing mapping and start with something and then test it. And with the
Yeah.
weeks and with the months, everything is going to progress, everything is going to change happily, of course. And you can start thinking about optimizing and growth. But you cannot think about growth if you haven't done the first step. So a lot
Yes.
a lot of things to be working, even though if you're new in the CRM, or if the company is new with CRMs, or if you have been using the same CRM, maybe you want to rewrite your processes. Maybe you want to go over the sales process and see, oh, maybe this step, this is not relevant for us anymore. We set that up 3 years ago, but right now the process has changed a lot. It's okay. It should be changing. It's pretty uncommon to have processes. Um,
Right.
Even though
Yeah.
if it's a company that has been doing the same thing for the past 50 years, your audience change, the market changes, so your processes should change or should adapt to new dynamics. And so should the CRM, because the CRM in the end is mapping the processes the things that you do. So there's always work for a super admin, because we are always
There is.
updating, we are always trying to propose new things, and that is the idea. I think that is
Yeah.
the idea. You could be reactive, as you were saying, trying to put up
Well, that's the thing.
fires.
Like when you don't have this documentation, like you have no choice.
Yeah.
And then because you're also bombarded with new tools and you're like, okay, I got to start using that. And your automation example, I, like I love just this is why honestly this is why like workflows and reporting are like some of my weaker spots because I'm usually like if I can't trust the data on this record, don't talk to me about any kind of other automation or visibility in the system. Like we got to handle this problem first. In association labels, right? When I hear people say like, "Oh, like how can we automate this? We don't want our team to have to like label all these records." And the first question I ask is, "Have you done it manually yet?" Like,
Yeah.
please do it manually first. Figure out what it needs to be, and then there's ways to automate that. But I would argue in that case, like association labels are one of the most important data points in the system now. And if you get that right, everything else can work for you a lot better. So why do you even want to automate that part? That's like should be one of the last things, especially if you have like, parent child companies and like it's super important to get that part right. And that's where I think again as an admin, if you're aware of how important that piece is, now it's not about trying to automate it off, but then now you got to sell the value to your team. Like, no, this is why you, first of all, as a salesperson, I need to know that there's 5 sub companies related to this company. And I don't necessarily want to automate that part for you because then you just use the parent object when I need you using the child object.
And I think
I digress.
this could be, I think association and labels could be, and I mean it like separately, associations on one side and then association labels on the other side. I think this could be a great talk maybe for one of our next sessions,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of examples of usage of that. People don't really get it for the moment. They were used to assign or associate only, as you were saying, primary company or parent child company. But there's a lot of new possibilities right now with that. A lot of people still doesn't know how to use it. It's still a little bit complicated to use it from workflows and from lists, because it's not very intuitive. There's a lot of yesterday there was a lot of talking about that with the product team with HubSpot in the CRM hug, super admins
Yeah.
hug. So, well, I think this is something important that maybe we can talk about
I,
in a future session.
yeah. No, I could talk about that every day right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, this has been great. And I'm so happy that we're doing this. Hopefully, people are finding value. Um, it's tough but fun at the same time. If you're in this position, you can help your team with the most powerful, like one of the most powerful platforms. That's also one of the most easy. It's very easy to use But once you get to that place of common language, before that, you can get in a lot of trouble, especially if people have, habits in other systems. And just, that's your job as the admin, is to get people in the system, using it well so that the system can work, for them and the business. Right. So I look forward to next time. I'd love to talk about association labels and all these different use cases we're starting to see. It's a lot of fun. So until then, if you guys want to think about association labels, maybe you can find some opportunities and send them our way and we can talk about it. And on the way, we'll just keep growing. Thanks,
Yes,
everybody.
I will try to find some of the questions in the community that they're always asking about associations. So maybe we can discuss live some of them and different approaches, because in the end, that is the wonderful thing about HubSpot, that sometimes we get to do things differently, as we were mentioning. There's not only one way of doing things, so it's just a way of finding the best way for you and for your company. So in the end, we're just trying. These talks are just trying to help people think differently and think different options and open your mind and your possibilities with the CRM. So, well,
Indeed.
thank you, Chris, for having me again. And
Yeah.
let's
We'll
just
see
keep
you
doing
next time.
this. Bye,
All right. Thanks,
everyone.
Lucy.